Hello, my dear students of class 9. Today, I am going to teach you a poem, The Daffodils by William Wordsworth. Before I begin with the poem, I would like to give you a short introduction about the poet William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth was born in the year 1770 and he died in 1850. He was one of the most important poets of English literature. He was a nature poet. He was born in the English Lake District, which was a place filled with beautiful lakes, hills, meadows, and streams. So I think because he was born in the lap of nature, most of his work is based on nature. So this particular poem, The Daffodils, was written in 1804 and it was first published in 1807 in poems in 2 volumes. Later in 1815, Wordsworth revised it and this version has survived till date. It is one of the most famous poems. It's a lyric expression of feelings of intense joy evoked by a natural scene. Actually, William Wordsworth saw the daffodils in the presence of his sister Dorothy, but in this particular poem, it seems Wordsworth is alone because as he reviewed the scene over the years, he arrived at an experience that was probably his own. So before I begin with the explanation of the first stanza of the poem, let me give you a short introduction on the structure of the poem. So it's a poem of 24 lines consisting of 4 stanzas. Each stanza is of 6 lines with a rhyme scheme A, B, A, B, C, C. So I think you can see at the end of each line A, B, A, B, C, C has been given. So that means cloud is rhyming with crowd, that's why AA. Hills is rhyming with daffodils, that's why BB. And trees and breeze, these are 2 rhyming words, that's why they have been marked as CC. So this is the rhyme scheme in the poem The Daffodils. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills. So when you look at the first 2 stanzas of the poem, we can see that Wordsworth is loitering alone in a state of loneliness and detachment. He seems to be unhappy. He seems to be detached from the nature. So he's just moving around and he loiters around in a state of loneliness and detachment, feeling very, very unhappy. I wandered lonely as a cloud. So he compares himself to a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills. So in these 2 particular lines, Wordsworth has compared himself to a cloud and that cloud is just floating. And where is it floating? Over vales and hills. So vales means valleys and hills. So the cloud is just moving above the valleys and the hills. So even here the image of the cloud emphasizes a sense of detachment. So that is why Wordsworth has compared himself to a cloud which is lonely and detached. So that is why he says, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills. So as he was just loitering around, what happened? When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. So what happens as he was just moving around? He sees a crowd, a host, a group of golden daffodils. So suddenly he sees a group of daffodils and that is a sense of pleasure and surprise for him. So as and when he was moving around very, very unhappy and sad, all of a sudden he sees a crowd of golden daffodils. And those daffodils bring about a change in his mood. They are growing in large number. And where are they growing? Beside the lake, beneath the trees. So the daffodils are growing in large number beside the lake and beneath the trees. And what are those daffodils doing? Fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So the daffodils are fluttering and dancing with the breeze that blows over them. So when he sees those group of daffodils, he is suddenly engulfed in a flood of emotion. And the serious mood which he is in right now, that changes into a another mood, and that serious mood is broken. So the sight of the daffodils fills in him, instills in him happiness and delight, which he had not experienced for a very long period of time. So that's why the poet William Wordsworth has used the word dancing. So he has used the image of dance to show the contrast between his own state of mind and the daffodils, which are dancing in joy, celebrating the simple pleasure of just being and living. So nicely the flowers were there in the lap of nature. And that is what brings about a change in Wordsworth's mood. That is why the poet has used the word dancing in order to show, in order to emphasize the contrast between his own state of mind, which is so disturbed and so lonely and so detached, with the daffodils, which are so happy. That's why they are fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So these daffodils, they are in complete harmony with nature, unlike Wordsworth, who is detached from nature. So we see this kind of contrast between the mood of Wordsworth and the mood of the daffodils. The daffodils are so happy, so ecstatic, because they are in the lap of nature, whereas Wordsworth finds himself so unhappy and so depressed and so detached from nature and everything. So this is the explanation of the first stanza of the poem, The Daffodils by William Wordsworth. The second stanza of the poem continues as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. They stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in a sprightly dance. So the two lines, continues as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, tells us that the poet compares the daffodils to the stars in brightness as well as in numbers. So just like the stars that glow in the sky in huge numbers, in a similar manner, even the daffodils were just growing along the bay in such a huge number. So the daffodils remind the poet of the stars that shine along the curve of the heavens. So they were in large number, just like the stars that shine on the Milky Way. So Milky Way, as you know, is the galaxy of the earth. They stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. So they seem to be numerous and unending as the stars above. So what he sees is they were stretching in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. So the daffodils were just growing along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in a sprightly dance. So 10,000 saw I at a glance. As you can see, this particular line has been underlined. So what this line is trying to tell us is, the poet may not have seen 10,000 daffodils just at a glance, but the poet is just trying to exaggerate the situation. So he may not have seen 10,000, but when he is just telling the readers how many daffodils he saw, he is just exaggerating the situation and telling us that there were 10,000 daffodils, and that also at a glance he saw so many daffodils. So he may have seen many flowers there, and he just writes 10,000 in order to exaggerate the situation. So, tossing the heads in a sprightly dance. So, the flowers, they were not stationary, they were just moving because there was breeze, and due to the breeze, the daffodils, they move and toss their heads in a dance of joy. So, they were tossing means moving their heads in a sprightly dance. So, very joyfully, very gaily, the daffodils were just dancing. They were not standing stationary. So, as you know very well, these flowers and all cannot stand stationary because of the wind, because of the breeze. So, they just tend to move their heads from this side to that side in a sprightly dance. Sprightly means very, very gay and very, very happy dance of the daffodils. So, in this particular stanza of the poem, the poet has described that the daffodils were just continuous and in numerous numbers like the stars that shine in the Milky Way, the galaxy of the earth. And also, they were stretching in a never-ending line along the margin of a bay. And he also says that he saw so many daffodils, 10,000 saw at a glance. And what were these daffodils doing? They were tossing their heads in a lively and a very, very gay dance. So these daffodils seem to be very, very happy in an ecstatic mood. That's why they were fluttering and dancing and also tossing their heads in a sprightly dance. So this is the explanation in the second stanza of the poem, The Daffodils.